Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident fanalist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. I think we're going to take a little bit of a break from the series. We can pick it back up. Like I said, it'll be, a day or two to get through the rest of the first round picks and whatnot. Making sure that we got it all locked in, locked down. I don't know. We might not even do it. I'm really not sure I want to do offensive. I don't want to say I'm so positive we're not going to do it. But the only thing driving me to do it is the fact that if I don't, and they draft an offensive lineman, I'm going to feel like an idiot. But at the same time, I might be okay with that. Either way, today, we're going to do Mock Draft Monday. It's going to be a first-round mock, not a Packer 7-round mock. I don't like the 7-round mocks as much because they just seem so speculative and nonsense, I don't know. What's the goal here? What are we trying to do? Seems really easy to just make it perfect all the time, but I don't know. But with the first round coming up, I want to try to, for one last time, hone in on what the latest news and notes are and see if we can get a half a step closer to figuring out the Packers situation, what that might look like. And we may look at a couple different things. Trade up, trade down, etc. See what's available, but it does tend to take some time, so why don't we, without further ado, get started. No real big news and notes that I'm aware of, at least not at the time of this recording. And so we'll start off with Tennessee. There's been no movement. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of things that have caused me to question or whatever, and I have a feeling some of it is a combination of boredom or deception being pushed out by the team. So it's kind of hard to know, is this nonsense or is this like a development I should be paying attention to? But with Tennessee, that's not the case. It's been Cam Ward since, I don't know, February or something. So it's pretty well about as 100% as you can get set in stone. They're selecting Cam Ward, quarterback out of Miami. Some of the nonsense talk has been Cleveland. Cleveland was Abdul Carter for kind of a long time. And then lots of rumors came out. No, dude, it's Travis Hunter. It's Travis Hunter. And remember, Cleveland wanted him primarily as a wide receiver. So I have him down as a wide receiver here. But now there's been some rumors that actually it could be Abdul Carter. Despite media assumptions about selecting Travis Hunter, sources indicate Abdul Carter is neck and neck with Hunter. One source claims the team is leaning towards Carter, pending medical clearance on his foot. Considering I'm not sure whether to take this super serious or not, and second of all, the fact that it's still a coin flip and there's some medical questions for Abdul Carter, I'm just going to leave it Travis Hunter. I feel relatively comfortable with that. There may be some developments as we get closer, but that's where I'm sitting. The New York Giants then have a relatively easy decision to make. I think they take whoever's available between Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. If there was a question of, a suitable quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, that would probably be the pick. However, it's seeming like a certainty at this point that the earliest he's going to go is 9 to the Saints, and I'm not so sure how I feel about that. We'll talk about that when we get to it. So, number 3, Abdul Carter, edge rusher out of Penn State's going to the Giants. New England for a while. There was a lot of talk about, I think it started Will Campbell. And then there was all these rumors, Armand Membo, they really like Membo. Membo's the guy, you got to watch out for Membo. And it's like, all right, penciling in Armand Membo for the Patriots. However, then we had, week or so ago, a lot of love for Armand Membo in the Patriots camp, but in recent weeks, they've been telling people Campbell is their guy as he's more of a pure left tackle. Again, that may not be true, I don't know, but as of right now, I'm absolutely leaning toward Will Campbell will be the pick for New England. For the Jacksonville Jaguars, it's been pretty well locked in for some time, and that is Mason Graham, the defensive tackle out of Michigan. And so there's been some fluctuations here and there. Is it Travis Hunter, then Abdul Carter, or Abdul Carter, then Travis Hunter? Is it Campbell or Membo? Jacksonville's been pretty well locked into Mason Graham since, a long time. If Travis Hunter's there, it could be okay, well, he's not there. There is talk about don't rule him out for an offensive lineman. fine. Things can happen, sure. I mean, with Membeau and Campbell gone, probably not. But, I mean, this has been... Actually, Membeau's not gone yet. I was looking ahead a little bit. Mason Graham is as regularly talked about to this team as anybody else. After 5 is where you start to get a little bit iffy. Las Vegas, been a ton of talk about Ashton Jeanty, but I don't, it's a little iffy. Part of it is because he's a running back, and so, if it was a quarterback, tackle, edge rusher or something, you'd feel much more like, oh, of course, that's locked in. But, you've got sources say they're seriously considering offensive tackle Armand Membeau. New GM John Spytek had success with Tristan Wirfs in Tampa and needs to upgrade the offensive line. And the thing is, like, when you have a guy like Membeau, when you have a big need at offensive line, when you already have a track record of and a direct example of things like Tristan Wirfs, I don't know why you draft Ashton Jeanty. I don't know why. I do know why. I understand he's a very good football player, but still, even though I was right about Cam Ward, generally when I try to introduce what I think is rational, I end up being wrong. So when the whole world's saying Ashton Jeanty, Ashton Jeanty, Ashton Jeanty, and I'm like, yeah, but I think that's stupid compared to taking a tackle. So I'm going to continue mocking tackles to them. I usually end up being wrong. So I am going to plug in Ashton Jeanty here. I would say it's like, 75-25 or something as far as how confident I am. Then for the Jets, this one is pretty well locked in. There's been a ton of talk about it for a while now. Armand Membeau, if available, which in this case he is that dude. There's talk that they want to move down unless Membeau is there. Of course, that's kind of irrelevant because everybody wants to move down. There's talk about Chicago may want to move down, and Minnesota wants to move down, and the Saints want to move down. And yeah, we know, dude. We know. Everybody wants to move down. You're not going to have a trade partner, so just shut up and pick somebody. There was about a month ago, the note that the Jets are infatuated with Warren to the point that they are trying to set up multiple meetings with him, which is why I had mocked to him there relatively recently, but I'm going with the more recent news, and right now it is Armand Membeau. Carolina also I feel very comfortable with this pick as well, maybe even more so than some of the other ones. Jalen Walker, edge rusher out of Georgia. In fact, I actually set up a 7-round mock just because I want to be able to plug in. You get these random rumors about 2nd round, 4th round, 5th round. It's like, I wish I could put that somewhere. So when things come up, I'll put that in there. The Panthers need wide receiver help, and so that seems intuitive, but you get notes like this. Despite wide receiver being a clear need, the Panthers have reportedly shown little interest in meeting with top wide receiver prospects, the TCU's Jack Bech being one of the few receivers they've formally met with. There's also Joseph Person of The Athletic says, the Panthers are open to trading down from the 8... Oh, that's the wrong one, but there you go, trading down again. NFL's Chad Reuter forecasts a wide receiver run to kick off round 4, emphasizing the class's depth, and suggests teams like the Panthers could find playmakers on day 2. I don't fully understand that note because day 2 is not round 4, but that's fine. The point being, when I'm doing these later mocks, I just kind of scroll down here, put in Xavier Restrepo for the Panthers at 114, just to kind of plug in these kinds of things. The point is, they need to address it. They're looking a little bit later. No direct ties to Xavier Restrepo, and I checked the rest of my notes to make sure nobody else is tied to him. And then I think the first really difficult pick is New Orleans. Shedeur Sanders has been very heavily mocked ever since the Carr news. Derek Carr's got some serious injury stuff going on. And so I just checked right now over at NFL Mock Draft Database, 40% currently mocking Shedeur Sanders to the New Orleans Saints, and there's certainly a lot of people talking about it. However, the 2 most recent notes that I've heard, number 1, the Raiders and Saints really like Quinn Ewers. That would be a round 2 pick. If the Saints draft a quarterback, it'll be with the 40th pick rather than the 9th. That's Nick Underhill, New Orleans football. If you're confused what the heck that means, which I had to look it up. His website is neworleans.football. He is a part of the New Orleans Football Network. So New Orleans football is I was like, what does that mean? Is it like, does he work for the New Orleans Saints? Like, Like the Packers have their own media people or whatever. No, it's just New Orleans football is the name of his spiel here. And this could all be speculative. The fact that they like Quinn Ewers doesn't mean they're not going to take Shedeur Sanders. And the fact that a Saints guy is like, nah, there's no way they would do that, doesn't mean that he has inside sources necessarily. But as of right now, the pieces are fitting in such a way. I mean, the biggest piece is everybody wants to do it, but I just wonder if that's, everyone's trying to find a spot for Shedeur Sanders right now, and it's really hard to find one. And then you get the Carr news, and they're like, oh, there you go. That's a good spot. But for me, you couple it with the fact that, Pittsburgh is looking at him, and even they're kind of like, I don't know. I feel like I'd be surprised, depending on how desperate. There is this one note here. Let me pull this back up. Where was it? Diana Rossini of The Athletic reports the Saints are, quote, on a mission and laser-focused on getting a quarterback in the draft and have been throughout the season, even before the Carr injury news. Well, that's possibly because they had some inside, they maybe knew that was a thing. But, again, still, that doesn't mean Shedeur Sanders at 9. That could be Carr or Jackson Dart or something, or not Carr, Ewers or Dart or something like that. So, again, I'm going to leave that alone, but that just, it's so much easier to put Shedeur Sanders there because it just, sometimes the puzzle pieces fit nicer that way. Because now I don't really know what to do. Plenty of talk about their second-round quarterback pick, but as far as the first round, people seem to be all over the place. In fact, they like Andrew Armstrong, the wide receiver. Like, how does that help me at all, ever? No idea what you're talking about. The only real thing I have to work with here is Jordan Reed expects the Saints to draft an offensive lineman or a pass catcher like Tyler Warren. I think I'm just going to go with Tyler Warren. He is on the consensus board right now, number 9. This dude has been flying up the boards here, isn't he? Went from a mid-first to a top 10. When did he jump in here? Went inside the top 10 on the 4th, it looks like. I think I'm just going to go Tyler Warren here. Do not feel good about it, but it is what it is. And then another tricky one is the Chicago Bears. I've been looking at Omari and Hampton. I think I've been doing that kind of recently, but I'm kind of standing on my own with that. That nobody seems to be in line with it. I know that Chicago wanted and wants to get a running back. They could find one in the second round, and may be much more aggressive there. I don't know that with Ashton Jeanty gone. Obviously, if he falls, then that's an easy pick. I think I'm going to change my thought process on this and let them go again with another offensive lineman. That seems to be the broader consensus is Kelvin Banks, the tackle out of Texas. I don't necessarily disagree. I think the offensive line is used way too much as a scapegoat. They've already got a first-round tackle on the right side. I think he's a first-rounder. He was a first-rounder. They just replaced the entire interior offensive line, so really there's just one spot that you could target, and he's not terrible, but I guess it's the last spot on the offensive line. If you want to just try to perfect it, and if this guy's a complete stud, then cool, I guess. I don't know what else to tell you. But, Kelvin Banks, tackle Texas. All right, why don't we, about a third of the way through here, go ahead and take our first break. We'll come back and look at the San Francisco 49ers. Still have the same notes from last time around, but they do absolutely help. Nick Wagner of ESPN writes, the 49ers arguably need 3 new starters for the defensive line. One rival NFC scout told Matt Miller he thinks 49ers should do an all-trenches draft. According to ESPN's Field Yates, the 49ers are considered a top trade-up candidate in round 1. I don't care. I'm not doing the trade-up thing. There is a lot of talk about trade-up for a tackle. So if you can find it, well, let's entertain that for a half a second here. Let's assume Will Campbell's off the table because you're not taking the Giants or Cleveland or Tennessee's spot. New England's going to take a guy. Jacksonville's going to take, is there any chance the Raiders would be willing to trade back with San Francisco so that San Francisco can go up and take Armand Membeau? And Chicago then obviously, or I shouldn't say obviously, but would likely end up getting Ashton Jeanty. I think the problem is if Las Vegas doesn't want Ashton Jeanty, they want probably Armand Membo, which you're just giving up all of that. So probably not. So yeah, I don't think there's. I mean, a lot of people do want to trade down. So if you find a team that actually wants to trade up, cool. But I don't know who that would be. The Jets aren't going to give up Membo so that 49ers can get Membo. So yeah, I don't really see a great partner for them. As far as the trenches, I think it's worth discussing an outside shot at Walter Nolan. I know it seems extremely early, and that's the only real reason I'm not going to go that route, but could be a bit of a surprise there. I think the pick that has always kind of made sense to me here is Mykel Williams. I actually just looked at somebody's mock draft. They had Mykel Williams going to the Packers. But I'm going to have him go here to the 49ers. For Dallas, it's always been, Genti was automatic for a while, and then it looks like he has no chance whatsoever of making it there. If the Raiders don't take him, the Bears certainly will, and who knows who else might be in that, race. Outside of that, though, it looks like they're looking at a pretty big playmaker, meaning probably wide receiver. If Tyler Warren was there, maybe. I would love to say, as far as wide receivers, there's been talk Matthew Golden has been skyrocketing up. It could be Matthew Golden, could be some other people. I'm going to do the thing nobody wants me to do, including myself, and I'm just going to do the most obvious thing, and that is Tetairoa McMillan going to the Dallas Cowboys here at 12. It's worth noting that if the Packers are just absolutely dead set on, we're willing to make a big move to go up and get that guy, that's when you start calling around to see, teams teams do want to move back. So, if the Packers were, let's say they wanted to move up with New Orleans, who wants to go back and possibly get a quarterback or something, it's probably going to cost next year's first-round pick to do it, to go get Tetairoa McMillan, which it's hard to justify that price. The player sounds great and all, but that's a heck of a price to bet, not only gamble one first-round pick on a guy, but to gamble two. If San Francisco wanted to move back, let's say, they're a trade-up candidate because they want to tackle, but the tackles are gone, so you want to move up to 11 to jump Dallas, that you could argue would be like a second-round pick. There's also still Jair, right? I don't know what Jair's worth, but that could be an additional bargaining piece. Maybe a second and Jair could get the job done. Might be a little bit more than that. I don't know. But, I don't know, man. It's going to be tough. Dolphins, I guess, feel real good about where they're sitting. They got plenty of needs, and so they're probably going to take best player available at one of those needs. And so I'm going to have Miami taking Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia. It's a good fit for the team, and it is best player available as far as, positions of need, so to speak. Tight ends, it gets a little bit iffy. Tight ends. Colts, it gets a little bit iffy. Tight end has been kind of the top priority, but Tyler Warren is long gone. Colston Loveland is still a decent enough option, but there are other issues that they need to solve, like offensive line and whatnot. Just because I really don't know, I am going to stick with it and have them taking Colston Loveland, tight end out of Michigan. However, Josh Simmons, possibly even Nick Emanwari or Malachi if he were still available. For Atlanta, it's constantly been edge. Well, that and trade down like the rest of the world. The other thing to consider if the Packers do want to trade up, considering everybody wants to trade back and there's not a lot of interest, you can probably trade up at a bit of a discount. But edge is definitely the most common. The two guys specifically that have been linked are Mike Green and Shamar Stewart, who are sitting on the consensus board at 17 and 18. I'll just take the best player available, which is Shamar Stewart, according to Consensus Big Board. Now, I do think this is falling pretty favorably for us, and I'm trying not to be biased, aside from Tetairoa McMillan. But, Will Johnson is still on the board. Jahdae Barron is still on the board. Mike Green is still on the board. Shamar, for those that, like that. Matthew Golden, for those interested, still there. Forgot to get him off my list. All the defensive tackles, minus, Mason Graham, but you know what I mean. Ibuka Burden. So this is also a time when, because, let's just say from my perspective, that top dude is gone, I'm okay waiting. At least for now. We'll wait and see how it goes. I don't think there's anybody. Again, I really like Jahdae Barron as a dude. Maybe really like Will Johnson, but I'm also very torn because I did see the speed becoming kind of a problem at times. But he also looked pretty special, so I would be maybe considering moving for Will Johnson. But then on top of that, sort of the tiebreaker, I guess, is the injury concerns. A lot of conflicting reports here. Charlie Campbell said the Cardinals are expected to target trenches or a cornerback. There's also a note that this is a flashpoint for teams wanting to draft an edge rusher. I don't know specifically if that means that this is kind of expected to be an edge rusher or not, but kind of sounds that way. There's also been talk about defensive player, so that all ties into that. But then there's also talk about wide receiver, although that's more of a general, they must do it soon, first 3 rounds kind of thing. So edge certainly seems to be the top option. And Mike Green is kind of the last remaining edge that isn't considered sort of a late first-round prospect. So I'll put him in there. Packers, if you were interested in an edge, kind of more or less missed out. Certainly options if you want to. But as far as value, according to the consensus board, it's kind of gone now. All right. Where are we at here? 17 Cincinnati. So a lot of the chatter with Cincinnati was, hey, there's that really bad, awkward situation going on with them and Hendrickson, so they need an edge rusher. Well, they could go James Pierce. That's certainly an option. I think another direction to consider would be defensive tackle. Kenneth Grant is the top on the board, but the name that I'm hearing a little bit more often, maybe just because other people think it's, I don't know, is Walter Nolan. So again, I mean, this is wide open in my opinion as far as the direction they can go. But I do think if I had to, at this exact moment in time, slap a dollar bill on a bet, with the board being as it is, like if Mike Green was there or Shamar Stewart, I'd probably go that route. But with those two going 1-2 off the board, which actually there was talk about Cincinnati possibly being a team that wanted to move up if there were, hardly any, for that reason. Pretty brutal for Cincinnati to sit there and go, hey, as long as Stewart and Green don't go off 1-2, we'll be all right. And then sure enough, that's exactly what happens. But I think Walter Nolan makes a good amount of sense to still help out that defensive line. Seattle Seahawks, I mean, this is a pretty solid note here. And so I'll probably just ride it out because you don't get much better than this. Tony Pauline said people I've spoken with think it's going to be Gray Zabel. Another real easy one, especially considering how the board has fallen. The rumor for a long time has been Atlanta and Tampa are very interested in Jihad Campbell, the linebacker out of Alabama. Atlanta, bigger priority edge. Edges were available. Edge was taken. So Tampa Bay, Jihad Campbell, linebacker, Alabama. For Denver, they're kind of similar to Dallas. They're looking for a playmaker. So there's talk about possibly Omarion Hampton, tight end if they were available, which they're not, or wide receiver. I kind of think this is a good spot for Matthew Golden to go. Again, Omarion Hampton is right here. Decent option. Then we get to the Pittsburgh Steelers. What shall a person do? The talk has been obviously Shedeur Sanders. It sounds like they had a meeting that didn't go well, but it also sounds like the head coach is advocating for him. I don't know if that was maybe before or after the meeting or whatever the case may be. I think I'm just going to pull the trigger and do it here. Just from the sake that, Shedeur Sanders is, and I'm sure that this has been rapidly changing, but he's still the consensus number 6 prospect. I don't want to get necessarily too carried away with the fall here. He's probably going to be gone before this if I had to, sort of do a, over-under. So, although I'm skeptical about Pittsburgh and Shedeur as a pairing, I do know Pittsburgh wants a quarterback. I do know Shedeur probably, I struggle that he gets much beyond this, so it just kind of seems to be a fit. And, again, I think Shedeur could very easily go 9 to New Orleans. I think that's a very distinct possibility. So I just don't know if I want him to fall beyond this. And then last one before we take our final break here. The LA Chargers, for a while there, it was real big for, wide receiver, some other options. But lately it's been, and Omarion Hampton is an option here as well. But kind of the louder thing that I've been hearing a little bit is more about Kenneth Grant. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with that. We got Jordan Reed of ESPN, citing sources, reports that GM Joe Hortitz and head coach Jim Harbaugh are expected to continue emphasizing the defensive front, naming Kenneth Grant and Tyleik Williams as 2 players to watch. So there's a couple other things in here, but high-ranking NFC executive could see Hortiz's focus on defensive line based on his time with the Ravens. Chris Ream of ESPN could see the Chargers using 21 for interior defensive line after losing Morgan Fox and Poona Ford. So seems to be moving in that direction. Weird noise was my daughter, by the way. I'm not over here snorting and slurping or whatever the heck she's doing. Let's take a break. Got the Green Bay Packers on the other side, and then we'll run through the rest of this and call it as we continue to roll on into draft week. Happy draft week, by the way. It's freaking draft week, bro. Oh, well, it certainly wasn't intentional, and I probably shouldn't have allowed it to happen. But Will Johnson is sitting here. I'm primarily just trying to go based on what I'm hearing and all that kind of stuff, or what other people are hearing. What I'm hearing other people say who other people are hearing, who are probably team executives lying to everybody. But it does kind of get to a point where, similar to Shedeur Sanders, where guys get to a point where it's like somebody's got to just do it here. But you know what? We're here. And the options would be Will Johnson, Jahdae Barron. Josh Simmons is here, but no. James Pierce off the edge, along with Ziraku, or however you say his name. Derek Harmon, obviously an extremely popular pick. I haven't done it. We haven't discussed it a ton. We haven't probably discussed it enough. All the talk is Teteroa McMillan falling. And he just goes flying off the board. However, in this scenario, Will Johnson, who I think, and by the way, I don't think this is super crazy, because, all the talk with Teteroa McMillan falling, I don't know that there's a ton there to hate. Will Johnson, first of all, I think there's serious questions about his speed. The fact that the guy will not even run a 40, he's refusing. And then the injury concerns and all that. I don't know that it's crazy that he could end up falling. In fact, I don't know that it's crazy that maybe if a corner did end up going, it would have been Jahdae Barron and still Will Johnson falls. So I am going to do it. I'm going to have Will Johnson be the pick for the Green Bay Packers, cornerback out of Michigan, 4th Michigan player to go already in the draft. Again, there are certain things, when you watch the corners in the order that I do, I've been advocating it for some time. The heck was that noise? If you're a more experienced, let's say, scout or something, you probably don't need to do this. There's certain things you watch, and it doesn't really matter what order you do it in. I am not as experienced, obviously. I obviously have done a lot of this, but as far as, professionally or whatever, the thing I advocate for is starting from the bottom and working your way up. Because if you start from the top, a lot of times you're just like, I don't get what the big freaking deal is. And you start to notice nuance when you start from the bottom, when somebody does something that the other guys don't, or when you see speed for the first time and you're like, oh, okay. That's why, by the way, when I watch Teteroa McMillan, is like, I've been watching wide receivers, a lot of them, in order, in succession. I've seen slow guys. I've seen supposed fast guys that don't seem very fast. I don't see a problem here with this speed. I'm not saying 4.3, but I'm not seeing an issue here. So there were times with Johnson, with his movement and his I kept talking about the wide receivers, their ability to cut and change direction and do so with speed and everything. And you watch Will Johnson go from a, sort of the reverse of a wide receiver, from a strong, fast back pedal to stop and shoot back the other direction. Is like, I have not seen that so far. I've seen some stuff. I've seen some good stuff. I haven't seen that. And so the only real concern is speed going to be an issue? However, we don't have necessarily blazing fast guys at corner. There's a disputed 4.38 for Nate Hobbs at his pro day, but other people had him at 4.48. Those freaking stopwatch guys, man, I swear. I mean, none of them are slow. I don't know. Maybe they're quick. And remember, I mean, based on the film, which, I mean, when we talk about film, we're talking about guys watching him play, which includes his speed. This is a potential top 10 pick. So, I mean, this is the first round in 2025. There's a lot of questions, but, there's enough upside to get excited about. This is a guy that wore the number 2 jersey at Michigan because he wanted to wear Charles Woodson's jersey. He said, I wanted to put myself on a pedestal and hold myself accountable every day. So, kind of a sneaky, exciting thing to keep an eye on. Again, he could easily go top 10, if not very likely to go, top 15, top 20 before the Packers. But you just don't know how this stuff's going to fall. I mean, like I said, I watched this other mock draft, and like all this, everybody's just flying off the board. All the stuff that you dream of is just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then they pick Mykel Williams, and I'm like, oh, I hadn't really put too much thought into that because he's usually long gone by now. So, depending on how things play out, it could be a pretty surprising outcome. There's always the trade-up option. There's always a trade-down option, although, again, how many teams actually want to move up? The one thing that gets real interesting is if Shedeur Sanders falls to 23, because now you got a bargaining chip. It's another thing to keep an eye on, because if they make it to 23, now you got, could some of those second-round teams be kind of peaking? Really maybe didn't expect them to get this far. The Browns, possibly, who, didn't take them at 2, might be real interested about taking them at the back of the first, kind of jumping back up and getting them. It's not certainly not an exact parallel, but reminds me of what the Ravens did. Their first pick was a tight end, and then they jumped back up into the first round and took Lamar. Giants, we've heard they were desperate for a quarterback, but they're not taking Shamar at 3. Could they jump up? Anyways, moving on now, the Minnesota Vikings. Again, tons of talk about moving down. Of course, they definitely want to. They have no picks, which was their decision to trade away all their picks for some unknown reason. I still can't wrap my head around the fact that they supposedly have a data-driven GM, but also have no picks. I don't know what frickin' analytics book he's been reading. The problem is, again, who wants to move up? So there's a lot of talk about needing a corner. DB in general, I've seen Imanwari being a solid option, but I think it's pretty obvious what they really should need to do at this point with the other cornerback falling, Jahdae Barron. So another guy not expected to make it quite this far, but does. And Packers as well as the Minnesota Vikings are going to benefit from the fall of the corners. Houston Texans expected to add a wide receiver via DJ Bien-Ami of ESPN. There's also talk the Texans are expected to add speed backs in 2025. I don't really know where Amarian Hampton falls on that, but I don't think it's necessary to do that here, especially with all the talk of need at wide receiver. And on top of that, the biggest thing, again, don't know exactly how concrete it is, but from what I've been told, Emeka Egbuka doesn't get past the Texans at 25, so doesn't get much more solid than that. As for the Rams, take a wild guess if they're in the trade-down market. Oh, turns out they are. They do not have a second-round pick, so clearly they're going to want to trade back. Now, I'll be honest, there is a real good option here, and that is Jackson Dart, who has been moving up into first-round contention. He is currently consensus 25, so it actually would make a lot of sense. I'm not going to do any trades right now, but I do think that there's potentially a market. Packers too, possibly, depending on how interested. I mean, they could. I know nobody wants the Packers to trade out of the first round. I shouldn't say nobody does, but it's probably not the best option when you're all jacked up and excited. But it's something to consider. I don't know if there's any first-round teams behind us that could be possibly interested. I mean, the Rams maybe, but whatever. Which could be a pick here, Jackson Dart, to be honest. But just thought it was hilarious that, oh, they're going to trade back. Watch out. I'm stuck and I'm torn here on Jackson Dart just because they've kind of brushed that off. Not that that really matters, but you know, the Packers, when they drafted Jordan Love, flat out said, yes, we absolutely would consider drafting a quarterback. The Rams are like, nah, we don't really worry about it. I mean, if it happens, cool, but we're not. It does line up really nicely, though. Screw it. Let's do it. Let's have some fun. Jackson Dart, quarterback, out of Ole Miss to the Rams. I think I'm going to do another one that is a little bit of an outlier, but that's good because we do the same crap all the time. And it's kind of a newer note here. There is a guy that has not really been mocked in the first round at all. He is consensus 54, which is not that crazy. But the note is that he could slip into the back of the first round, possibly to the Ravens or the Bills. We're sitting here at 27 with the Ravens, so let's just get crazy. Let's get weird with it. Baltimore Ravens at 27 select Carson Schwessinger, linebacker, UCLA. For the Lions, not surprised that the chatter is trenches. The two biggest things are edge and interior offensive line, and two guys are kind of jumping off here. Tyler Booker is sitting at 31 as an interior guy. James Pierce is at 30. I don't know if James Pierce... I mean, you could argue he's a good complement to Aiden Hutchinson. I don't know. I know it's important. I know they need it. I also know that the offensive line is beginning to a little bit, possibly, maybe deteriorate. Edge is significantly more important. I'm just going to do it, though. Tyler Booker, interior offensive lineman, Alabama to Detroit. And then I've seen this note pop up a couple times already. Teams primarily targeting Omarion Hampton. Denver Broncos didn't take him. LA Chargers didn't take him. Houston Texans didn't take him. And Washington Commanders. Well, considering there's no other real strong connections here, there's some talk about wide receiver, but not necessarily first round. In fact, the follow-up there was somebody like Ty Felton, who was certainly not a first-round pick. I am going to take Omarion Hampton at 29 for Washington. As for the Bills, there hasn't been a ton of talk. They're kind of like the Packers. There's just nothing coming out. The only thing that they've said more or less is that they really like the depth. I mean, this is probably an honest take because this is kind of how everybody feels, but they like the depth of the class, so 30 is kind of a good spot to be. So there isn't a ton of need for them to move up, move back, or anything like that. Don't have a ton to go on, but the only real note that I did see, again, pretty weak, but it's there, is maybe some interest in cornerback Trey Amos out of Ole Miss. So Buffalo will take Trey Amos, cornerback out of Ole Miss. Bringing up Kansas City. Kansas City, I don't even need to check my notes. In fact, the main note is that they're actually a trade-up candidate. So of all the teams that want, Green Bay again, whatever, Kansas City really wants offensive line, offensive tackle. Josh Simmons out of Ohio State is sitting right here. Not really, like I said, doing trades in this mock, but if I was, that's been the talk, is that they're very desperate to move up and are wanting to be somewhat aggressive about doing that. I don't know if they necessarily need to. I guess it depends how their board looks, but, Simmons is generally sitting there, as is Josh Connerly and Donovan Jackson and possibly Tyler Booker. But still, keep an eye out for that. And again, with the potential teams willing to trade up or interested in trading up, that does increase the odds of teams being able to trade back. Now, Minnesota, for example, is probably more desperate to trade back than like Green Bay. But, again, just something to keep an eye on. Finally, Philadelphia Eagles. Very similar to Detroit. They are very much a trenches team. I think most are, but, they really hammer it. They've lost quite a few people on the defensive and offensive lines over the last years. So, depending on who's available, which actually the board is looking quite good. They got James Pearson, Donovan Ziraku, but also Derek Harmon is sitting right here. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I think Pierce needs to fall into the second round. It's just kind of a weird thing. It's not that he's necessarily not a good football player. I think there's just enough question marks with him that I could see that happening. So I think Derek Harmon has earned himself a spot in the first round. We'll have him go 32 to the Philadelphia Eagles. All right. I'm going to get out of here. You all have a good rest of your day. I will talk to you tonight, tomorrow, whatever. Have a good one. Bye-bye.